Hello guys, this is a video that teaches us how to push our source code to GitHub. So what we need to do first and foremost is to make sure we have Git installed on our local machine. It could be on a Mac, it could be on your Windows. So let's go to a browser in case you don't have Git installed. So just go to Git download, see downloads Git. So this is where Git is hosted. So if you're on a Mac, you click on Mac, then the recommended way to install is to install through Homebrew. So you do brew install Git for Mac, right? So there are different ways to do that. Then if you're on Windows, you go to Windows, click here to download. Once you click on this, it's going to download the executable file .exe file that you can install on your machine. So make sure to do this first. Again, first step is have Git installed on your local machine. Once Git is installed, then the next step is to go to GitHub. So this is the home page for GitHub, and the first thing you need to do is to sign in. If you already have an account, you can sign in. If you don't have an account already, you click on sign up to sign up. So I already have an account. I'm just going to sign in. So yeah, so this is my GitHub account. So the next thing to do is to create a repo. So by the left hand side, I can see all my repo. You can also click on show more to view all the repos that are here. But what I want to do now is to create a new repo. So I can click on this. That's one option. Another option is to go to all my repositories link. I have all my repos here, and I can do the same thing by clicking on this new button to create a new repo. So after clicking on that, it says create a new repository. So it says repository name. We'll give it a name. You can see it is marked here. Required fields are marked with an asterisk. So this is required, of course, but owner is required by default. So let's give it a name. Let's give it GitHub demo. GitHub demo. It says GitHub demo is available for me. Optionally, you can give it a description. This is a demo on how to push your source code, if I can spell well, source code to GitHub. So this description here is it's about the source code you are pushing. Again, it is optional, right? So you may do it, you may not do it, but it is okay to describe what the source code is all about. Like the project you are working on is about Africa Gazette and all that. Is your first project and things like that. So you can give it a description that is related to that. So for this project, I asked us to make it a private repo. So there are two options, either public or private. For public, that means it's going to be available to anyone on the internet. Whoever goes to GitHub or visits your GitHub account, they'll be able to see the repo. But for now, let's make it a private repo. Now let's not add a README file yet. The reason is, if you add a README file and then you want to link your local Git to your remote repo, it becomes challenging, right? So for now, let's not add a README file. You can also add a git ignore file. For now, let's just leave it as none. Then choose a license. Let's just leave it as none. We don't need any license for now. So create repository. So you can see this is a brand new repo. This simply means that we don't have any file on this repo. So quick setup. So if you've done this kind of thing before, so now what we're doing is we want to do a quick setup. It says, yeah, so there are two options. You can either push an existing repository from the command line, or you create a new repo on the command line. So what we want to do is to follow this simple step, right? So let's go back to VS Code. Now this is ready. We have a GitHub repo available for us to use anytime. So how do we connect this to our local work, our local development? So let's go to VS Code. Let's launch VS Code. Or first, on your desktop or anywhere you choose, create a new folder. Let's call it GitHub demo, right? The folder can be any name, so the name doesn't have to match the name we have here, right? Doesn't have to match the repo name. So give it any name. It's just for us to keep our source code. So GitHub demo. So let's open VS Code. So let's open VS Code. Now from VS Code, let's open our folders. You can go to open folder from here, or you can do it from file, open folder, whichever one. So once that is done, I have the folder on my desktop. It is named GitHub demo. Double click into it, make sure you are inside the folder, and then click on open. So here we are. So we have the folder opened on GitHub, on VS Code. So what we need to do now is to initialize a Git repo, a Git repository. Remember, the first step was to install Git locally, not GitHub. You don't install GitHub. GitHub is online, but you install Git to track the changes of your source code. Remember, Git is a version control system. You have to have it installed for you to be able to keep track of changes in your source code. So which is what I demoed the first time, going to this website, downloading the required version for your operating system. So once you have that installed, then you can move on to this next stage. So in this next stage, what we want to do is to initialize a local Git repository. Make sure you are inside the folder that contains your source code, right? And then you open your terminal. Open your terminal. In case you can't see it, you can drag this to the left. You see this option here, terminal. This is the terminal inside VS Code, right? For those on Mac or those on Windows, you can as well just open a terminal outside VS Code, making sure that you are in that particular path. So just make sure you have this GitHub demo folder as the current path in your terminal, because this is where you'll be issuing the Git commands, right? So we're inside this GitHub demo folder. So how do we initialize a local Git repo? Very simple. Init. You type git init, INIT. Init, short for initialize. Git initialize. So we're initializing Git on this particular folder, or in this particular folder, to track changes in our files. So hit enter. You can see it says initialized empty Git repository in this directory. You can see after users, your name, desktop or whatever, at the end you can see .git or .git. So Git that you've installed already, this particular Git you downloaded, creates a .git folder. This dot makes it hidden. You can see inside here, in this folder you can't see it here, but it is hidden here to help us track those changes. So if you go to, for those on Mac, if you do ls-la, you can see there's something inside this directory, inside this folder named .git, right? In fact, you can even go into it and see, if you do cd .git, no, .git, I'm now inside the Git directory. If I do ls-la, you can see there are some, these are the files inside that .git folder: head, config, description, hooks, info, object, refs. You don't need to know all this, right? What we want to do is to be able to use Git to keep track of our files. So let me go back. Make sure you are always in the home folder. In this case, GitHub demo is our home folder now. So I can clear my screen. Now we've initialized Git locally. The next step is now connecting this local folder to the remote GitHub GitHub repo or repo. So what you do is you copy. So you come down, copy this. So let's copy this first line first. Copy the first line. So paste. So what we're doing now is we are connecting our local Git repo to the remote Git repo, the one on GitHub. So, and this is the command: git space remote add origin this, and this is the address or the URL of the origin. Origin means where the source code is going to be hosted, and that's going to be on GitHub, on the cloud account on GitHub. So once you do enter, that's done. Okay, so after that, let's just go ahead and create a file. So let's call it demo.html. So with this open, let's add something just to push h1. This is a demo on how to push to GitHub. So we have this. Now observe this tab. This is your source control tab on VS Code. Automatically it's telling me, oh, there is a change. You can see Git is working, it's tracking changes already. It's telling me there is a change. It says one, look at it, it says source control, one pending changes or change. So if you click on it, it shows what has changed. Demo.html, because originally when we created the file here, demo.html, it was blank. So Git recorded it as the initial file. So it was blank. That is the initial file. And after a while, we now added this boilerplate code. Git tracked it again that, oh, this file has changed. And now it's recording the change here. Look at the changes. So if you double click on this, it shows you the current state and the original state. Take note, what you have on the left was the original state. In this case, when the file was first created, and then the current changes, the source code that we just added to the file. So these are the new changes, right? So with these changes made, how do we save it? How do we save these changes? And you save by issuing a commit command, right? So let's go to our terminal again. But before then, you do git add space dot. So remember, we're inside this GitHub demo directory folder. So, and the changes are taking place here. So what we want to do now is to add those changes to Git history, so that Git can now do a commit, or so that we can commit or save those changes. So you do git add space dot. Dot means that we're adding all the files inside this particular directory, so that Git can keep track of them. So once you do enter, that is done. So we've added. So the next step now is to commit. Git commit. Git commit option M, that is for message. You want to give it a commit message. You can name it, this is my initial commit. All right, give it a name or a message, and then you hit enter. So it tells us one file changed, 11 insertions, create mode. The 11 insertions represents the number of lines. If you come to your source code, you can see we have numbers 1 through 11. That means 11 lines of code have been added to the original empty demo.html. So those are the changes, or these are the changes, right? So what we just did now is to save it in Git history, so that Git can keep track of the source code. So the next thing we now need to do is to push these changes to the remote repository. So that's when we now issue git push. This second one is optional at this point, so let's just do git push. So the git push, so we can copy this and paste, right? So git push origin main, so we hit enter. You can see it says git push origin main, enumerating objects 3 done, counting object 100% 3 of 3, data compression using up to 8 threads, and so on and so forth, telling us branch main setup to track origin main. So the source code has been pushed to GitHub. So let's go back to GitHub and refresh this page. Boom. See, we have our first push. See, demo.html, the same source code we have locally. Look at this, is a demo on how to push to GitHub. It's what we're having here as well. This is a demo on how to push to GitHub. So all changes you make, now let's add a chain. Let's say paragraph. This is a new change to the source code. See, again, the source control is tracking it again. Look at this option M, means modify. That means the last commit, or the last commit has been modified. So there's a new head, so to say. That's a technical term. So there's a new here, there's a new change to this demo.html file, right? You can also, if you don't want to be doing, writing the commands here, VS Code has a utility for issuing those commands as well. I can just type in my message here, I added a new line, and click on commit. So we're using the GUI to do what the commands here can do. So I can just do commit. See, once I do commit, from here I can even just click on sync changes, because it automatically, VS Code recognizes the fact that we have added, remember when we linked both the remote and the local gate together. So the source control utility inside VS Code is already keeping track of that. I can just click on sync changes. This action will pull and push commit from and to origin main. I can say okay. See, it's loading, done. If I come back, look at this new line here will have been added. So let's refresh. If we refresh, boom, see, we can see this is a new change to the source code. So yeah, that is how to push and to pull. So you can also pull changes from the remote to the local, and you push from the local to the remote. So that's how to keep track of changes in your source code. So yeah, thank you very much. This is just a brief demo on how to push your source code from your local machine to GitHub. I hope this video helps people who are having challenges on how to do this. So please make sure you complete or you work on your assignment, push your code to GitHub, and then just keep working. This coming Saturday, we're going to meet for our next class. We're going to be having our next class, and then we'll also do a review of the assignment before we start talking about CSS. All right, take care, guys.